Hello, everybody. Today's presentation is on missing nutrients. This is an amazing presentation. I actually just gave it earlier this week to a group, and it was just kind of mind-blowing to them. I actually did it for Capital EAP, which is a employee assistance program, and the responses were just amazing. So I was at a talk last night on sports nutrition at Syracuse University, and the sports dietitian, Leslie, who's amazing, was talking about this in the way of her NFL players, talking about missing nutrients, talking about real food and getting this back into balance. So it is being talked about in all different aspects of nutrition, from sports nutrition to private practice, and talking about that we're actually missing nutrients. So if you don't know anything about Kelly Schweitz, which I'm sure you all do watching this, but to give you a little bit of background, this company was started in 2012 by myself, Kelly Springer, and we now work in worksite wellness, weight loss, sports nutrition, school nutrition, and private practice. We offer this amazing virtual platform through Healthy, where you can get 24/7 access to nutrition education. And that's all we sell is nutrition education, really, truly trying to influence everyone around the globe to eat a little bit better. Because if we eat better, we're going to have a higher productivity. We're going to be better workers and moms and dads, and we're going to have a clearer vision. So this is what we're going to do today. Now, in America, the saddest thing in the world is that we now have the standard American diet. This is sad. Acronym actually is sad. And it is sad because a standard American diet is missing nutrients. And what do I mean by that? Well, the standard American diet mostly consists of simple carbohydrates, which do not have nutrients, vitamins, proteins. And because we're not getting that full nutrition, it's affecting every aspect of our health. So these are some of the missing nutrients that we're going to talk about today: potassium, fiber, calcium, vitamin D, and iron. So these are just some of the missing nutrients. And we could go on for probably 10 more PowerPoint presentations about how when we eat real foods, we can get these missing nutrients very easily. But the fact that we're eating foods that aren't really even real foods, a lot of them we call in the dietary world that they are frankenfoods. These are foods that are made in labs and they don't naturally come from the earth. All right, so let's get into potassium first. So potassium is one of the nutrients that we cannot live without. We want to make sure that we have it because it does influence our body fluid, which influences our heart. So having too much potassium is just as dangerous as having too little. So this is where in America, we're like, oh, we'll just take tons of potassium supplements. No, again, everything in balance, including balance. And when we have actual real food, the potassium amount is in the perfect amount. So don't just take supplements. Make sure you're working with your physician and your registered dietitian to make sure you are in the right amount, the right category, a reference point actually to potassium. So right now we know that only 56% of Americans are reaching the goal of getting 4,700 milligrams a day. So this is sad because we want to make sure that we are getting potassium. And these are some of the foods that are actually high in potassium: are avocados, bananas, potatoes, spinach, green beans, and fish. These are some of the foods that are high in potassium. Even foods like tomatoes that we maybe not think about, even yogurt. A lot of dairy has a great potassium amount in it. So you can think about that as well. If getting in these varieties of foods are naturally going to contain potassium. All right, so our next one is fiber. And if you've ever heard me talk, you've definitely heard me talk about fiber because it's such a missing nutrient in our diet. So the average American is getting somewhere around 5 grams of fiber a day. We should be up, as you can see here on this page, we should be up to 25 to 38 grams of fiber per day. So what I recommend to make it a little bit easier for our patients is trying to see if we can get about 5 to 10 grams of fiber per day. That's what we're trying, or sorry, per meal, 5 to 10 grams of fiber per meal. But when we start with talking about fiber, people are not really well versed in what foods have fiber. So, one of the foods that we talk about are whole grains. And some people will say to me, and my type 2 diabetics will say, well, I'm not supposed to have grains because they're carbohydrates. Okay, so this is where the confusion lies. Let's look at this anatomy of a grain. So this is the difference. If we have a whole grain that has all three parts, it has a bran, it has a germ, and it has an endosperm. This is where the bran is going to have fiber, the germ's going to have B vitamins, and this is basically just the glucose or the sugar. As you can see, it looks like a honeycomb. When you have a processed or refined grain, it means that the bran, the fiber, and the germ have actually been removed. So you're removing the fiber and the B vitamins. You're just left with a simple sugar. This is the difference. So when we get whole grains, it means that you're getting all three parts, and it does mean you're getting fiber. Fiber helps to regulate blood sugar levels. So we want to make sure that we're getting enough fiber. And so changing the conversation around that, yes, you can have carbohydrates even if you have type 2 diabetes, but you want to make sure that the carbohydrates that you have actually have fiber. Okay, so that's the difference. That's the missing conversation that is just not out there right now. So making sure that we do have fiber is part of our everyday meal. Calcium. Now, back in the day when I worked in bariatrics, we used to give people tons of calcium because we saw bone loss after they had the surgery. Well, once again, that's not the complete story. Bones are made out of a lot of things, not just calcium. You actually need phosphorus, and you need vitamin D, and you need this combination of proteins. I mean, it's very complex. So when you're thinking about, again, just taking a calcium supplement, that's not going to fix the problem. Getting in whole foods, including foods like dairy, are going to have that perfect balance of proteins, magnesium, calcium, sodium, those electrolytes that are naturally found. So by getting in foods that naturally contain calcium, you're going to get a variety of those nutrients and vitamins that are actually going to help the bone. Okay. Then talking about vitamin D goes into that same kind of situation where when we take combination foods, like dairy products that have vitamin D added to them, you're going to help the uptake of that calcium and that phosphorus into the bone. Vitamin D is also responsible for helping us with our digestive health, also our immune system. So a lot of things came out over COVID about vitamin D in the immune system. So how does that all work? Where does vitamin D fit into that whole equation? Well, vitamin D fits in because when you eat fiber-rich sources, see how these are all going to tie together. When you eat fiber-rich sources, the 100 trillion bacterial cells in your gut biome, they actually break down those fibers into short-chain fatty acids. One of them is called butyrate. Well, vitamin D helps butyrate to make the mucosa layer in our digestive tract, which is part of our immune system. So it sounds disgusting, but when you have a mucosa layer that blocks where the pathogens, gluten, viruses can actually seep through the digestive tract and get into the bloodstream, it's important to have a very thick mucosa layer so that doesn't happen. Okay, so that's where when we say that vitamin D in the immune system, that's what we're talking about. Also, vitamin D has been linked to depression and anxiety. People that have lower amounts tend to be more at risk for depression and anxiety, and that ties into that digestive tract. 90% of our serotonin or happiness transmitter is made in that digestive tract. Now, how would that correlate? Well, as you have more of the mucosa layer, that's where the bacteria live. So the bigger the mucosa layer, the more bacteria and beneficial bacteria that create the serotonin can actually live there. So all of these different foods, as you can see just from that one example, all these foods come together in combination. So think about an egg as you see there. Now, in nutrition, the egg has gone from bad to good to bad to good. And sorry about that, but that's just where we needed newer research to understand why the egg would be so good. When you have an egg and you have that full source, you have one of the highest quality of protein sources. You also have vitamin D, vitamin E, choline, iodine, which we're not going to talk about today, but should be talked about. You have this complete nutrition profile, basically, but it had cholesterol. And that's why it was knocked of not being so great for you. Well, come to find out years later that we actually need cholesterol to take vitamin D from the sun to turn it into vitamin D3 that our bodies can utilize. So think about it. Cholesterol is not actually the enemy. Cholesterol is there to do a lot of different things, like help us to make our estrogens and try to make our bile salts, our cell development. So the cholesterol actually does a lot in the body. So it's only when we have high inflammation markers that cholesterol can get out of whack. And then that's the problem. But that mostly is coming from simple sugars and lacking of nutrients versus eating the foods like you see here in front of you, of getting in eggs and salmon and mushrooms and cheeses. So these foods can actually help to get you a whole bunch of nutrients that are going to work in combination. So how much vitamin D? Well, just like I talked about with your potassium, you want to make sure that you're getting vitamin D in the right amount. Again, work with your physician and your dietitian to look at lab work to see where your vitamin D level is. I truly believe that knowledge is in the power of knowing your numbers. If you do not know your numbers, if you do not know your vitamin D or know your potassium or know where you're at, then you don't have the power to kind of change that. So if we can look at those vitamin D levels and say, oh, okay, my vitamin D is below 30, I need to take this amount of supplement. So they are recommending right now, if you are in those winter months and you have a vitamin D below that marker, that you want to take somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 IUs per day. Now, if you're below 20, you probably want to contact your physician because you will need a script from your physician. And this is usually 50,000 units of vitamin D once per week for 6 weeks. So make sure to know your number and to make sure you're working with your physician and your dietitian to help you to follow where you should. Now, vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, meaning it stores in the body. So just like I said with potassium, you don't want your vitamin D being too high because it can cause toxicity. Remember balance, including balance. So we always want everything in the right amount. Okay, so iron is a complicated thing, and we're getting more into understanding heme iron that comes from animal sources and non-heme iron that comes from plant-based sources. So one is that with animals, you can absorb the heme iron more readily than you can the non-heme from the vegetables. So should we not eat the vegetables? No, those vegetables are going to give you fiber, as we talked about. They're going to give you potassium. They're going to give you magnesium. They're going to give you tons of nutrients and vitamins that we need to survive. So having those in combination with animal sources like your lean red meat, chicken, fish can actually help for that uptake. Also, something really cool is that when we have a vitamin C source with our iron, so vitamin C comes from citrus, comes from peppers, it can come from our strawberries. So that vitamin C source will help the uptake of iron. Pretty cool if we have these foods in combination. So think about if you have, for instance, your spinach salad and you put strawberries on it, the vitamin C from the strawberries is going to help the uptake of that iron from the spinach. It's pretty neat. So again, having these foods in combination is where the best health is. So with iron, we recommend to make sure you get your levels checked. Again, too high of an iron can be not good. So again, we always want to make sure that we are in the right range for iron levels, for potassium levels, for vitamin D levels. All of our blood work should be in the normal range. If you fall below and you are taking a supplement, make sure you're taking your iron supplement away from calcium sources. Calcium and iron compete for absorption in the body. So you want to make sure you're not taking those at the same time, and definitely take your iron supplement with a vitamin C source. So to wrap this up, I wanted to show you how you can incorporate more of these whole foods into your diet plan. As you can see, these are all normal foods, from pears and raspberries to milk and tuna to your lean beef and edamame, cooked broccoli. So basically getting in those real foods 3 times a day will ensure that you do not have vitamin deficiencies. Vitamins, minerals, protein, fiber, making sure that we get all of these different real foods and switching it up is going to ensure optimal health. Okay, so I hope that you truly enjoyed today's presentation and understand that real food is best. At Kelly's Choice, our tagline is real people promoting real food. That's what we do every day. And I hope that you thoroughly enjoyed today's presentation. Make sure to check out our Instagram at Kelly's Choice _nutrition for more ideas. And definitely reach out to us at kellyschoice.org to book one of your private practice sessions today. They are covered by insurance, almost all of them. So reach out to us at kellyschoice.org. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day.